Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Insurance Town. I'm the Mayor, Heath Shearon, and the host of this podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm pumped you're here hanging out with us. Obviously, always am, but today I have a special guest in Nick Vitali coming to hang out with us today. Before I get into that, though, I want to talk to you about my sponsors in Smart Choice. They are the fastest growing agency network, hands down. They have agency-friendly contracts. They have, 10,000 agencies across the country, 11 billion in premium. That's a lot of weight to carry in our industry, and they're going to use that to help you to become a better agency. Guys, you want to go check that out, smartchoiceagents.com. Go check it out. Tell them the mayor sent you. You'll be so glad that you did. They are phenomenal. Also, guys, check out my friends over at Canopy Connect. Go to usecanopy.com/Heath. Check it out. Get your demo. Get your discount because they are the one-click solution to getting those deck pages you need to quote your prospect. It is just unbelievable the things that they're doing, and they want to help you from top to bottom when it comes to the intake process, to starting the customer journey from prospect to the very end. Guys, go to usecanopy.com/Heath. Go check it out. Also, my good friends over at Old School Marketing, Rusty and his team do a phenomenal job with direct mail pieces. They do a handwritten method. They do a drip method. They also do digital marketing. They do it all from start to finish as well when it comes to the marketing aspect. Rusty's going to sit down with you and try to understand your business, what you want to do, why you want to do it, what motivates you, what you want your customer journey to look like from that perspective. Rusty was a former agency owner as well, so he understands our business and your needs. Go to oldschoolmarketing.com, OLDE schoolmarketing.com. Now, ladies and gentlemen, sit back, relax, and enjoy this phenomenal conversation with my good friend, Nick Vitali. Nick Vitali, what's going on, brother?
What's up, man?
Golly, it's good to see you, man. It's early in the morning, as we talked about earlier. So if you're listening to this in the afternoon, sorry, but I'm recording this in the morning, so it's going to take me a minute. My voice hadn't quite warmed up yet, but we're getting there. So, and you've already had service contractors at the house. You've had a morning too.
Yeah. I got up early this morning and had folks over grading the ground and ripping up roots in my driveway. So yeah, I've been up having coffee and watching people demolish stuff. It's been great.
Yeah, you building something in the backyard or what?
Yeah, and wife and I we're putting an addition on the house, so
Nice.
we're just getting started after 8 or 9 months of planning and proposals and all the fun stuff.
Oh yeah, man. So you're acting as general contractor as well, I'm assuming.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, dude. And so just for the audience sake, you're out of North Carolina, but whereabouts?
So we're based in Chapel Hill. I live over in Durham. We've got our agency, All About Insurance. We've got 10 locations in North Carolina, and we're all up and down kind of I-40 corridor in the middle of the state.
So being in that area, are you a basketball guy? I mean, that's like basketball mecca.
Yeah, football and basketball. Obviously, you see, behind me. But yeah, no, I'm a huge, and don't hate me if you're a Duke fan, but I'm a Tar Heel. I'm a big Tar Heel
Okay.
fan. So yeah, I pull for them hard.
Okay. Even in football?
Yes.
Yeah, I hear you. Hey, I live in Arkansas, so it's tough sledding there for me in that as well, but I get it.
Yeah, I mean, we've been, hyping up Mac Brown for the last 5 years, and it's been great until we get to game 7 or 8, and then everything falls apart. So
I hear you.
I don't know if what I'm feeling for this year, but
No,
it's a
I
love
hear
hate
you completely.
relationship.
I hear you completely. No, I just figure where you're at, whether you like sports or not, you can't help but be a part of that, or like feel that.
Well, and the big thing here is, especially so we're in Chapel Hill. Like when I was growing up as a kid, it mattered whether or not like your dentist was a Duke fan or a Carolina fan. Like it mattered
Yeah.
where you went to like spend your money because you're like, oh well, they're Duke fans. I'm not going. They're Carolina fans or NC State fans. So it's a big deal around here. Like, Ohio State and Michigan. I lived in Columbus for a number of years, and like they think their rivalry is serious. Like they put X's over M's in Columbus. Like
Yeah.
you got nothing on us over here. Like we literally won't work with a company because they are a Carolina fan or a Duke fan.
Yeah, man, I hear you. And it's funny. In Arkansas, we hate everybody, but nobody even thinks about Arkansas as a rival because we're just. No, I say that in jest, but anyhow, dude. So tell me a little bit. Let's take a walk down memory lane. We know you're
Sure.
from Chapel Hill. We know you're in North Carolina, and you know your insurance agency. But tell us, walk us back a little bit, and take us up to where you are now, and tell us a little bit about your journey.
Sure. So we talked about this earlier, second generation insurance kid. So I grew up, with a dad who started in the agency when I was 3 years old. And really I'll take it back to there. So my dad actually owned a chicken wing restaurant before he ever got into insurance. So my mom and dad actually brought chicken wings down to Chapel Hill, North Carolina from upstate New York. And when they moved down here in 1982, no one knew what chicken wings were except for the students who were from New Jersey, New York, and all that up north. So when my dad was working in that business, he had a bad back injury and he was, laid up in the hospital. And long story short, the claims adjuster came in and said, "Hey, man, you're going to probably need a desk job." And he said, "Okay, well, what do you do? Like, how much money do you make?" And that spawned into a conversation of, well, man, maybe you should get into insurance. So fast forward about 2.5 years, and my dad started a scratch nationwide agency when I was three. And so I started young in, the dinner table insurance talk of starting a business, running the business, all the crazy stuff that happens with a claim with a customer. Because at that point, when you're running the business, your hands are dirty, right? You're really, really in it. And so you're talking to these customers all the time, and dad's bringing that stuff home and like talking about it, at dinner and stuff. So I grew up with that. Fast forward, I got licensed at 18. It was like I was working in the agency anyway. So my dad basically was like, "Okay, Nick, now it's time that you go ahead and get that next step." And so I started working in the agency. I was taking payments. I was, running remittance and things like that. And then started actually writing policies right before college. When I went to school, I went for business administration and a marketing minor. Like my passion is marketing and sales and kind of meshing the two things together. And then like in my later life, I realized that technology like plays a huge part in that. So I've wrapped that all in. But after I was in college, I got a job at Insurance Intermediaries Incorporated, which for those of you who know who that is, that's now Nationwide Brokerage Solutions. Um, and so there was a guy named JJ Bowman. He is a mentor of mine that at the time he was working for Nationwide Sales Academy, and he came down to our agency and was doing a sales presentation and was looking around the agency after it, Heath, and he's like, "Who's doing all the marketing here? Like this stuff is awesome. All the graphics, all the, pop-up banners, like who's doing all this stuff?" And my dad's like, "Yeah, that's my son, Nick. He's been doing all this for us for years." So JJ realized pretty quickly, hey, this is someone I want to bring into kind of the fold at Nationwide. So I got hired in after going through a bunch of, hiring, stuff. And I started there as a multimedia marketing specialist. And so I was like
And
grinding
what
Heath,
year was
editing
this?
videos.
What was the roundabout?
2013,
Okay, got it.
2013. Yeah, so I'm like at this point I'm 23
Yeah.
and I'm grinding like editing videos, writing copy and like doing all these like really honestly small fry stuff because at the time Triple I didn't really have like a marketing team. So I went to my bosses and was like, "Look, we need to start doing email marketing. We need to have a website. Like, we need to do all these things in order to get on page because it's 2013, 2014. Like, we need to start this process." So I got a team of people and we started grinding out our creative services and we kind of put up kind of an NBS on the map at that point. And from there, I moved over to sales at Nationwide, worked in their activation team for about 5 years, working with the sales managers, and COVID hit. 2020 COVID hits, and we're sitting there, and my parents have been asking me, "Hey, Nick, we've been wanting you to come back to the agency, and you've been on this track at Nationwide, and we kind of let you, spread your wings and fly, so to speak. um but we want you to come home.
So
And
you're 30 or so at this point.
right, so at this point in my career, I'm thinking to myself, you know I'm don't know what the future is with COVID, working remote. This is something I'm not good at. I'm not a remote worker. I'm in the office. Like, I need to be around people.
Yeah.
So working from home was tough. And so I made the decision to go home and come back into the agency. And that was at the probably midsummer 2020.
Oh,
Came
wow.
back, and when I came back to the agency, and I've talked about this a little bit, we had we had a great agency, but we had a mess with all of our, like, tech and all that. And so my kind of main priority was getting all the tech stack kind of on page. So fast forward to now, and we're 5 years in, and of me being back, and it's been great. The agency is doing really, really well. We affiliated with Levitt Group, and I could talk about that too, but at a high level, we made that decision because of our people. And we wanted to make sure that, like, our people had a future. And then obviously for me, I had a future. So that's kind of the long of it. I can get short on it too, but that's the long of it, man.
Yeah, man. And I love that there's so many things that I've been taking notes on over here just to get into because as the audience knows, there's a lot there of, I'm second generation as well, and we're right at sounds like 10 years apart. Maybe you were born in 2000?
I was born
No,
in
99,
90.
90.
Yeah, born in
Yeah,
90.
that's what I meant. 10 years apart. So,
It's
I,
early, man. You're
yeah,
doing math at, like,
sorry,
early.
man, I can't do math that early, but yeah, so we're about 10 years apart. So, what I'm thinking, so for me growing up, right in high school, junior high, late junior high, whatever high school area, that's when like AOL became a thing, like the internet was a thing and chat
Yep,
rooms and all that. And for you, end of high school, middle high school, that's when like Facebook and MySpace and social media kind of blew up,
yep.
for kind of was created, I guess I should say. And so you were at the early stages of that, like I was with some of those things that had to have shaped your mindset when it came to the technology because you're right there in that. And I feel like, same thing in my career. But then with dad, let me ask you real quick, was dad, your dad, a tech thinking kind of guy, or was that something that you brought to the table? Was he open to those things?
So dad's been super open to it. And what I love about my dad is he was one of those people where, like, his marketing was always off the wall and was always, like, very out of the box. And so he
Yeah.
won a lot of business, and I think a lot of awareness in our area, because people were like, "Oh, yeah, Mark Vitali Insurance. I've seen your commercials before, or I've heard your radio ads," or whatever the case may be. So I think for sure he's always been willing to kind of look outside the box and push the envelope when it comes to things. And again, like, if it's going to make money and be profitable and like all of that, it's a no-brainer for that, right? So
Yeah.
that's one of those things that always was behind all the decisions that we made. But yeah, he's super open to that. And he knows that insurance isn't getting any easier, right?
Yeah.
And so making our people's life easier, if you're going to use technology to do it, that's a huge win. If you're going to make our customers' life easier, that's a huge win. So, like, for him, as long as it's not crazy expensive, and we can't make the ROI make sense. And the same thing for me, like, that's when I go and look at any insure tech. Like, I'm always looking at what's the real ROI on it, because at the end of the day, you got to make sure that you're still staying profitable.
Yeah. 100%. And, the other thing I thought was interesting in hearing your story, again, back to some of the synergies there of, I started off in dad's agency for a few years, and I realized for me personally, I would rather have my dad as my dad as than my boss. So I left and
Yep.
went to start my own agency, and then I went to the carrier side. Going back to some of that experience you had working for, the big company and the corporate and doing that kind of thing. I did the same thing with EMC and worked for a big, company, for a good almost decade of my life learning that kind of stuff. And one of the things I think is interesting in our industry, up until the last, I guess, 5 or 7, 10 years, for me, I was a marketing guy in the carrier world, but marketing and insurance is more like marketing policies, marketing this, marketing whatever, not
Sure.
true marketing like you're talking about and what you brought to the table. And I think the shift in the things I've seen as I've grown up in this industry, and now I'm 22 years deep, 23 almost. Um, I think a lot of agencies, let me know how you feel on this. I think there's a lot of agencies that put a ton of focus on the marketing and just expect it to lead to sales. And there's some that don't focus at all on the marketing and they just rely solely on sales. But I believe there's got to be that balance. And so, of both. I think you can't have one without the other nowadays. You've got to be out there with whether it's awareness campaigns or it's, driving them to product or your website, whoever it might be. Where do you feel on that balance is, and where do you feel like you bring to the table on that with AAI?
I'm definitely biased, but you absolutely need both. Like, there's no doubt right now in 2024, if you're not marketing, your agency, and I'm not talking about marketing policies and remarketing business, right? We're talking like you're talking. If you're not out there making sure that people know who you are and know what your agency does, what your people do, like, what are you doing? And I don't mean that to be rude, but that's how your agency is going to survive, especially right now, as all these, you know, private equity firms are out there snapping up all these different agencies. Like, if you're not making sure that you're continuing to grow your agency, you're going to get gobbled up by somebody else. So that's part of it. The other thing is like marketing at a high level, people are, how can I say this, Heath? Um, People think it's too hard, and it's really not. Like, I mean, having a social media presence isn't that difficult. And at the end of the day, if you can't get found on Google, like if someone can't type in, Heath Sheeran insurance, they're not going to find you. And so if you don't have that presence online, on Google, and doing the marketing things there, like the bare minimum stuff, like you're not going to get those sales anymore, because the people that are going to snap all that stuff up. Now, you can still go to your local communities, go to your country club, go to your church, and you can drum up business that way through organic guerrilla marketing, and that
Yeah.
still works totally. But that's super hard, and that's a grind. Unless you're the people pleaser and you love doing that stuff, um, that's still great. But if you're the agency owner and you're continuing to try and grow your business, grow the agency, the marketing side of it allows you to step away from being the point of, the face of the agency, so to speak, and starts giving your agency a brand, right? And once the
Hmm.
agency has a brand, you're no longer Nick Vitali insurance agent. It's all about insurance, or it's whatever the case is for your agency. And so they're not calling on Nick every time there's a problem. They're calling your agency. Let's just have them on camera.
I don't know, but man, I got a really close up look
Got
at
a really tight view there for a second.
wow.
There we
That
go.
was I thought you did that on purpose. Like, man, you were really serious about saying whatever you were saying, man. That was awesome.
Hopefully we can edit that, but if not, hey, whatever.
Dude, I thought it was awesome.
I
You
just
look
got this
great
new
though.
I just got this new camera, so it's sometimes I
Wow.
guess likes to, AI man, who knows.
Yeah, dude. Dude, it was awesome. It was
But
nice
but
emphasis there.
back to your question, like I mean, dude, marketing is a huge part of insurance today, and if you're not doing it, you're missing the boat. So obviously my bias, yes, but I've seen the success side of it and I know that it works.
Yeah. A couple of things, and I've been standing on this hill for years now, but I feel like there's a difference and you tell me your thoughts because some people think all marketing is good marketing as long as you're getting something out there. The old, Jerry Jones, any press is good press, good or bad. But then there's those that, and I lean on this side more of it. It's got to be good marketing, in my opinion. It can't just
Sure.
be, on 4th of July, a picture of the American flag says, call our agency for a new quote, or the old tagline from the early days of Facebook and whatnot and LinkedIn of, get a free quote, call this number, or
Right.
just things that just don't add any value.
So you just said it. Like literally you just said the word. So it's all about value add, right? And I think that's the big thing these days is especially with social media and the advent of it, there's so many people out there that are influencing and providing like that value that people expect it when they're looking to a advisor, obviously, who's we're insurance advisors at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So they expect us to be able to have that knowledge, and so if you're not, adding value and kind of showing your expertise, like you're right, like just putting up a picture of the dog that, comes into the office, while it's going to get a ton of likes, it's not going to be like that good bottom of the funnel marketing that you need that's actually going to convert to business. It's just kind of going to be that thing up there at the top, which it's still nice and it might make you feel good because you got 50 likes on it, but at the end of the day it's not going to convert to business. And so that's where I think you have to have a good kind of balance of, having expertise in value add marketing where you're actually, either on camera talking about, a policy, or you're writing content and you're, making sure your website is like super, super on point when it talks about, coverages and things like that. So that when people Google for it, they're finding your site over the next person's site. But, that's kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, and I feel like so back for me in like 90, I don't know, I'm gonna say 93, 94. You were young. Maybe younger than that, earlier than that. I was like one of the first kids in, I feel like in Arkansas, but in my school that was like diagnosed with ADHD, and they like I was poster child of ADHD, and
Sure.
I still to this day struggle with it, and I take high dosage of ADHD medication, but I say all that to say, fast forwarding 20 something years, our world is full, it's ADHD. Everywhere you look,
Sure.
people have a short attention span. They need to be hit now. They need to be smacked in the face, hit over the head with a 2x4, whatever the saying might be. I think you have to be going back to somebody noticing you at Nationwide. You got to be creative. You got to be outside the box like your dad was early, and you got to hit them, hit your customers. I don't mean hit them like, with 2x4 of like buy my product, but I think you got to hit them with
No,
value quick. You can't just,
but at the
have a
same
long lead
time,
up.
you can even take that a step further, right? And apply that to the sales process, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
and that's
Yeah.
what we've done at our agency. I've talked about this a little bit, but um, do you remember the zero moment of truth that Google wrote
No,
about
go ahead.
2011? No? All
No,
right. So
man.
Google came out with this principle or theory, zero moment of truth. At the end of the day, basically, when people go out to buy, they go online and they Google search for it, or they look for reviews, things like that, right? And then they make a decision, and then pretty instantly they want to make, after they make that decision, the Gen Z and the millennials of, now, we want things instantly,
Yeah.
right? And so that zero moment of truth is when someone makes a decision online that I'm going to work with you. I'm going to fill out that form. I'm going
Yeah.
to, press, give me a quote. So we take that theory and we've applied it to insurance and we've applied it to automation. And so that's where we've taken the sales process, kind of what we were just talking about, and applied that instantaneousness to the second you fill out a form on our website or get a quote or do whatever the case may be, you're getting smacked in the face, so to speak, with a text message, an email, a phone call. Like we're hitting those leads immediately because, to your point, if you're not in their phone or in their pocket or hitting them over the head right away, you're going to miss them and they're going to go somewhere else. And so that's been applied now, not just to the marketing side of it, right, of being in their face and all that, but also to the sales side of it once you've got them in your funnel.
Yeah. So as a, I would still say, I would still call you a young, guy as far as in the agency role and in that role. And, and for all intents and purposes, I guess at 44, I'm still young with a lot of the boomers still running things and not ready to give up. And I say that with all the love in my heart for my boomers out there. But, you know, as you talk and we transition into some of the sales talk of that, would you say that, for you and for agencies now coming up in this, does some of that replace the good old fashioned cold call and beating the streets and knocking on doors and whatnot? Or is it just something that aids that or is an addition to? Where are agencies now needing to lean towards more of that online presence and buying leads and internal sales teams? or can you do outside sales and inside sales? And should you?
So, so I think it depends. I think the right answer is it depends on your agency, and where you guys are at. But I think there's a place for buying leads, if it makes sense for, the budget that you have with your agency, and if you can make sure that there's a return on investment on those leads that you buy. And that's, I think, a really fine line that you have to play, because if you're not making money on those and you're just gaining policies, you're killing the agency. So you got to be careful there. Um, I think the other side, I don't know, ask the question again just because I want to make sure I understand it.
So I grew up in just to go back. I grew up in the days of Dad taught me of door knocking. I mean, I'd literally go out. Dad
Yep,
would drop me off in an industry park or a industrial park, and I just knock until I got 20
sure.
yeses or 10 yeses or whatever it might be. And nowadays, there's more people buying online with inside sales teams, and they're taking in phone calls, online forums. Go for it.
Sure. See that ADD's kicking in over here.
No,
So
I
I
got
hear
you.
you, man.
I got some Vyvanse
So
if you need it.
it's still, I mean, again, like I said, it depends. It still works. I think that there's still a place to go out and go to car dealerships and go to, mortgage reps and go to real estate
Yeah,
agencies and things like that. Um, Door knocking at apartment complexes is probably not going to work anymore. I
right.
used to do a ton of that. I used to do, putting the brochures in somebody's windshield wipers and then running off. Like, you can't do that anymore.
Right.
That doesn't work. But I still think there's a place for guerrilla marketing. I still
Yeah.
think there's a place for it. There's some folks that are out on LinkedIn that I think do a really good job of it. I think CJ Huntspiller does a really good job
Yeah.
of it. I think there's some other folks, not, I hate to just name drop one, but he's the one that comes to
Yeah.
mind. But there's
No,
a
I get it.
lot of value, I think, still in that guerrilla marketing and actually going out and pounding the pavement. That being said, you got to couple it with the digital. You've still got to be able to have digital on that side, because people, number one, expect it. And number two, you've got to be there when they're looking for you. And they're not always looking for you when you're out running you're at a fair or a festival or a community, farmers market. They run into you then, and they might grab, some swag off your desk, and that's great to set up that top of funnel awareness. But
Yeah.
you also got to have that, web presence and those digital, marketing solutions in place, so that when they go out to actually look for you when they need you, you're there. So I think you got to have them both.
Okay, so that led me. You just answered the question, but for me, I was going to ask: Can you have one? Can you have an agency without one or the other? And you have 10. You mentioned 10 locations, and I'm sure they're spread out across North Carolina or multiple states. I'm not sure.
Across North Carolina.
Okay, so I'm sure some of those are smaller than others. I'm sure some have more sales than others and whatnot. But I'm seeing a lot more agencies nowadays that even some of their best salespeople are their CSRs or their account managers, whatever they might call them, the service team. And I love that, because that's the ones, in my opinion, that they get to know. Those are the people that answer the phone when they call. Those are the ones that they get the emails from, and they know Sally,
Yeah.
they know Julie, they know I'll say a boy's name, Tom or Bob or whatever it might be as well. But I think that's phenomenal to have that hybrid role.
We have it. We've done it forever. So we've been hybrid service and sales for 31 years now. And you're right. We have some agencies that are big. We have some that are small. Some have two people in them. Some are, six, seven, eight people. It just, it works. And for us, I think being a larger agency, you've got to be able to you've got to be able to have, dude, I don't know this morning. I'm super ADD.
No, you're good.
I keep losing my track.
Sales and service teams, and we could edit, no big deal. But like
Yeah, I
CSRs,
apologize.
account managers that sell and service.
Okay. So, like I said, we've got both.
Yeah.
I think it's still, there's a lot of folks that have gone the route of teaching just having a sales team and a service team. And I think there's still value in that. And the folks that are teaching that, I think, are doing a really good job. because there's value in that. But for my agency, and I think for agencies that are still doing the hybrid role, I think to your point, um, they're the folks that people are coming in to pay their bills. Like we're in some rural areas, and in some of those locations, folks come in because they want to talk to Tanya for 30 minutes. Now, granted, does that take up time, and could we be using that time to sell? Sure. But there's still a lot of value, I think, in relationships in this business. And I think, you know, uh, we as an agency, I'm not saying we as an industry, but we as an agency feel like those relationships are still important to making us, a part of that family's, life. At the end of the day, we're selling an insurance policy. If we're doing a home or a life policy or something like that, we're selling something that when things hit the fan, hopefully we're there to solve the problem. um I don't know what is going on.
It's all
We're
good.
there to solve that
Yeah.
problem. And
So
so I think it's important that they have a point of contact they can call on, and they can just, say, hey, Tanya, here's what's going on. And they don't need to call a 1-800 number or a virtual assistant or something like that that doesn't really have that relationship with them. So for us, the sales and service hybrid role is still really, really critical. And it works for, like you said, it works for our agency. It doesn't work for every agency. And I know the wave these days is to separate those two. Especially, we're a personal line shop, Heath. So let me kind of, preface what all the things that I have said with that. We're about 80% personal lines. We were a
right,
nationwide captive agency for 28 years,
right,
27 years. So we had to do things a little differently than I think a lot of the independent agents that
sure,
are out there obviously listening. And the captive folks, you resonate with what I'm saying, but it's been that way for a long time. And so for us to break that habit, um, while I say habit, in order to break that would have been difficult, but also we've still had a lot of success with it. So it doesn't make sense for us to change it. But times are changing. I'm aware that, the agency force is aging out, and a lot of the people that have been in the industry for 23 and 33 years and 47 years are not going to be here for a lot longer. And so we've got a plan for that. And so the agency of the future is going to be, I think an interesting topic of discussion that I don't hear enough about, honestly, is like, what does our agency look like 10 years from now? Okay,
yeah,
we keep talking about AI. We keep talking about, all these different products that are gonna, be a one-stop solution in tech. What's gonna be the easiest way for us to get either young people into the industry or keep the people that are currently in the industry? How are we gonna do that? I think that's a huge problem that we are gonna have to tackle. And this is a whole other topic, but I think it's an important one. The other thing is we've got a lot of talent that is going to be retiring soon, and a lot of knowledge and a lot of
yeah,
tribal knowledge that's
yep,
going to be aging out of the workforce. That scares me because
yeah,
there's a lot of us young whippersnappers out here who think we know everything because we have Google and we have a cell phone. When you can't Google, why is my general liability policy, seated? Like you can't look all these things up and get a real answer back from Chat GPT. So the knowledge that these elder statesmen of our industry are going, I think, to be leaving, or we're going to be losing, I think is a big problem we have to tackle. So I think that's where, these insure techs that are out there that are trying to like come up with, I see Vertifor doing it, I see other folks doing it, but coming up with a solution that is going to be like an all-in-one solution where we've been talking about this for a long, long time. I want a CRM, an AMS, a VoIP. I want, my text mess, all these things all in one solution. I want my rating all in here. It's because we need to be able to have something that a younger person that's tech savvy can walk into and they can say, oh, yeah, I can use this. Like, if you look at AMS, and I don't mean to be, hating on AMS, but like I came from Nationwide where back when I was a kid, we were still using green screens. And
yeah,
so that style of UX and design doesn't work anymore. The
Right.
Windows 95 style of design doesn't work anymore. It works for our current workforce because again, we've got that workforce that's, Gen, I don't know, I guess millennial really to boomer that are still really in it. And then you've got these Gen Zs and Gen Xers that are starting to come in. And honestly, the reality is that if we don't figure out that part of it, we're in trouble. So I think the UX and design, and obviously I'm a marketing guy. I came from creative services background. So like I like design. I like when things look good and when I use something, it actually works and usability is important. But I think that's a part of insurance as a whole that always gets overlooked, especially from an IT standpoint. Like I think a lot of people just like they code something up, it works, it gets the job done, and they push it out. And
Yeah.
so like that's cool, and like I'm it's great. Um, but at the end of the day, you've got to have a human, using this and working with this tool, and so it needs to work well. And so that all
Yeah.
kind of gets back to this hybrid service role. But I think it's important to talk about too. We got a lot of people who we're going to have to indoctrinate into the insurance industry here and start like bringing these folks in so that we have a perpetuation plan.
100%. Man, there's so many things that you got into there that I want to get into. I had to write it down. I have to keep this notebook with me at all times, otherwise my ADD goes crazy. But I'll go back to first of all, I'll get into really quick the hybrid sales role that you've got. I know that's been your DNA since Jump, as you mentioned,
Sure.
nationwide. But for those listening right now that maybe not have that approach or just getting into some of that or thinking about that, is that an intentionality thing, like a certain type of training you have to get into with that? Because going back to my consulting days with agencies, and I still do some of that now, a lot of CSRs feel like they can't sell or they're not
Sure.
salespeople, but yet they're some of the best ones in the office. My wife's the first one to say, and she's in the industry as well, I'm not a salesperson, but yeah, she's the best damn closer I've ever seen in my life, just because of who she is and type personality and whatnot. So starting off real quickly, if you could just say to those listening, is that an intentional thing they need to have? And is there special training for that? Or is it just empowering? Where does that come from?
So it comes from a need, but yes, it is definitely there. We train on it, and it's something that we talk with our staff about. And honestly, we're upfront when we hire. We to
Yeah.
explain to them that this is something where you're going to be customer facing, you're going to be working with customers, you're going to be dealing with their service issues, you're going to be taking payments, but you're also going to be selling and have looking for opportunities because you're the person who's talking to them. You're the person who's going to hear about the life events before anybody else. They're going to be the ones who tells you, hey, my son just turned 16, he's about to start driving. That's a aha moment for you to
Yep.
say, okay, let's try and cross sell that, let's go ahead and add them to the policy. So it's important to be able to have those frontline folks empowered, like you said, to also be able to sell. But to your question, some people don't want to do that or don't feel like they can do that. And I'll never forget back in the day, and you actually worked with Kelly, but back in the day, Kelly Donahue Piro and Adam DeGrade, when they were at
Yeah.
Astonish, they came into our agency, and we were working with them, and honestly that was probably our first foray into like a real CRM tool.
Yeah.
They were awesome when it came to training. Their onboarding was amazing. But one of the things that they always told us is you have some people who are order takers and some people who are
Yep.
really salespeople. And it always resonated with me because they went through our office and they had like this spreadsheet after they interviewed everybody. And it showed like in one column you had your salespeople, and another column it had your order takers. And I'm looking at it and I had to kind of take a double check on it. And my dad at the time was like, this is crazy. He looked at the numbers from the last 36
Yeah.
months moving that we had because we had all our production numbers. And almost every person that was in the order taker list was our top 10 or 15 person from a sales perspective. They were killing it. So while they don't like doing or they say they don't like doing it, they were actually pretty darn good at it.
Yep.
And the
Yeah.
numbers proved it. And so we actually were like, okay, Kelly, like, look, we love what you're saying, but the numbers aren't panning out. And so what we're going to do is we're going to kind of shift what we were thinking on, changing our staff to a sales and service model. And we're just going to keep it like it is. And that has worked out really well for us. And that was probably, oh my gosh, we're talking like mid 2000s at this point, mid to late 2000s, I think, when this was all going on, because this is a
Yeah.
long time ago. So that's a blast from the past for anyone that's listening.
Yeah, and what's funny is you say that is, and it hadn't been long since, I stopped working with Kelly full time because I still did some other stuff part time for a little bit, but they still talk about that same things they just talked to you about. And not to say
Yeah.
they haven't upgraded their
No,
material. That's not
and
what I'm
they're not
saying.
wrong.
It,
They're totally
right.
right, dude. They're totally right.
And you're 100% right. And then, fast forwarding to another question I want to get to, something you brought up, which I think is interesting. This probably lead into the last little bit of the conversation that we have about some of the other technology kind of things. But you'd mentioned Tanya, and I don't know if that's a real person's name in your agency or made up name, but Tanya and someone coming in to spend 30 minutes with Tanya. And why, while a lot of agencies might say we need to put a stop to that because it takes a lot of time and I think that's where automation comes in. That's where this marketing comes in. When you've got drip campaigns out there, if you've got social media working for you, you've got all of these marketing pieces out there working for you, and AI, whatever it might be, that allows Tanya to sit there for 30 minutes with, Fred or, this couple or that couple that comes in to talk and have some coffee. And she's got shit going behind the scenes that's helping her to be able to sell and spend time and do those things. Am I right?
Totally. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Now, at the end of the day, you're probably listening to this and you're still saying, well, I still want that person to be selling. And I hear you. But I also feel like
But those may not be the
we've got
agencies that
enough.
are those may be the agencies that are saying that right now that aren't utilizing automation and AI and those tools like you
They're
are.
probably the same agencies that aren't texting their customers. Let's be honest. Like, and that's a whole other tangent I can get off
A
on. But
hundred
like
percent.
those, and I don't mean to, belittle anybody, because that's not what I'm
No,
trying to
me either,
do.
and they know that. Yeah.
But I think there's a lot. What are there? There's 33,000 independent agents out there, and there's so many of us that are not using technology to our advantage, are not using automation, are not using text messaging, are not, we're stuck in the past in this industry. And for a lot of folks, it's, not wanting to expand your reach or not knowing how to do it. But it works for us. It works for a lot of agencies. And at the end of the day, that's what people, like I said, I keep getting back to this, what people expect from you. Like,
Well,
so,
you brought up the pandemic. Pandemic changed my career as well. That's when I sold my, got out of the agency world for the last time and got out, sold that, got out of that, got into what we're doing now. But, I think for years and years and years and years and years and years, we did things the way things always been done. We just weren't going to change
sure.
because we didn't have to. But the pandemic made us change. It made us have to look at things differently because we couldn't do those old
Yeah.
school door knocking. We couldn't go to the apartment complexes. We couldn't go to an industry park or industrial park and just knock on doors, or a business park and knock doors or make phone calls like that. We were in masks and sitting behind our desk. We had to figure out ways to utilize technology. So now, the last 4 or 5 years, we've been in hyperspeed, sprinting towards getting more technology involved. And so if you're not, I think you're gonna maybe not get left behind, but you're gonna be, maybe passed up a little by people that are using those kind of technology. You could still be successful, not, but I think there's a reason why that buzzword of tech stack and automations and AI and all these things, which at this point, it's sidebar ADHD squirrel moment. I feel like we've been talking about AI for so long, it feels like forever,
Yeah.
but it's really still a new phenomenon. But it feels like even the last 2 years, oh my God, AI, I'm so tired of hearing about it. But anyhow, that's another topic altogether. But I just feel
Well,
like
we
utilizing
can
tech.
get into that in a second too. But
Yeah, but I feel like utilizing your tech stack the right way and finding, you don't have to have 1,000, companies. And I say that, that's a lot of number. You don't have to have 15 pieces of tech to make it work. Just finding 3 or 4 or 5, 7 that work well for your agency, for Tanya, so to speak, and rock and roll.
without a doubt, I think the hard part in this is, again, because of the complexity of insurance agencies and independent agencies, and are you a part of an aggregator? Are you still out on your own? Some of these tools are dictated, if you are with a captive agency or you're with
Yeah.
you've affiliated with some, larger entity. Some of these AMSs may be dictated to you. You got to use this. If you're still able to make the decisions on your own, it's usually budget constraints. What can I actually afford and what can I put into my business that actually is going to work? And then scalability is the other thing. Like for me, my big issue, Heath, always is the multiple. Okay. So once I start looking at how many, price per seat for a piece of tech, I have to start thinking about, okay, now multiply that by 40 seats or 45 seats. And then what does that actual monthly payment look like? And
Yeah.
so for some agencies, you may be able to look at that and say, yep, that's fine. I can afford that. For other agencies, that's a crazy ask and you can't afford that, so you got to look for other solutions to fill in those gaps. And so that's where you get the agencies who have 15, 20 pieces of tech that we've all pieced together because, well, there is a solution out there that does it, but it's really an enterprise solution and it's way too expensive. I can't afford it, so I bought this and this and this and this, and they do roughly the same things, but they don't talk to each other. And like that's where I think from a tech stack perspective, you've got to do a real analysis of what you have, do a real inward look at what is it that your agents need, like what kind of tools do they actually need to be more effective, be more efficient, spend less time, whether it's keying things in, right? Double entry. How do we
Yeah.
eliminate those types of things?
Yep.
How do we eliminate things like, having to make multiple phone calls to a client? Instead, we're sending a text message to the client and it's happening instantaneously versus I'm waiting for someone to listen to a voicemail and then call me back. So
Right.
those types of things, I think when you can start to actually piece those things out and say, okay, I actually need an AMS system. And if it's one of the big boys, great. If it's not, that's fine too. But you need to find a CRM that talks to that AMS.
Yeah.
That's table stakes these days. Have to
Yep.
have that integration. The
Yeah.
next thing is your voice, over internet phone, your VoIP.
Yeah.
If you don't have a good phone system, and you're still doing things through like, AT&T or Spectrum or whatever, and we could talk about this more, but like if you aren't very, very deep in the weeds on your metrics for your phone and your email, like you don't know what's going on in your agency.
Right.
And so technology allows you to do that these days. You can know how many phone calls someone's taken. You can know how many minutes they're on, outbound calls versus inbound calls versus calls to a carrier. And
Yeah.
you can sit there and say, hey, look, carrier X, my clients or my team's on the phone with you guys for 2-3 hours out of a day, because nobody's answering the phone at the claims, center. So
Sure.
like you can use that data, in a lot of ways, but you would never know that if you didn't have a system in place to do that. So tech is super important, and I think finding the right tools that work in your agency, that work within your budget constraints, and that obviously add value to your team or add value to your customer experience or add value to your executive experience. Because sometimes you buy a tool because, like Agency Zoom, originally we bought it because we needed reporting for our executive team, because I needed to know in real time how many sales we have,
Yeah.
and so that was the original reason we got Agency Zoom. There's so many other things that it does that have added value to our agency for what it for what it cost, that it's been amazing and beneficial. But like that was the original reason we brought that into our tech stack. And so that's, like I said, that's where you just got to find the things that work for you, and then obviously, you know try is try as you might to minimize and get a little more minimalistic if you can, just because it's a real bear to manage all these different things, especially for your people.
Yeah.
As you grow and you start to scale your agency, you start to add more people to your agency. It's really difficult to onboard onto, 8, 9, 10 different solutions,
Yeah.
so I think that into account is important too.
Yeah. So, you know, I love we're in the same wavelengths. I was going to ask you the question of, if you were talking to three different audiences, which probably makes up a good part of my audience of the, early the early adopters have been around a while in tech. Where we tell them to go
Sure.
next? The guys right now, they're just now getting it. Which you answered that. You got to have a CRM, you got to have an AMS, and some in a VoIP. But now we talk about the next 10 years. I my opinion, it's my show, so I'm allowed to have as many of them as I want. I feel like early on, I went to ITC and did some podcasts, 2021 when they first brought it back in 2022, I believe. It was a lot of these tech vendors they did one thing, and that was like the thing that they did, and they just rocked it out and they killed it. And then slowly those people have been like, we do this, and now we do this, and do this, and do this. And so I
Hmm.
wonder, my first question is, fast forwarding 10 years, are we going to be looking for those solutions that do just that one thing really, really well, whatever that might be, whether it's, some prospecting tool or some lead list thing or whatever it might be? Or are they going to need to be multiple faceted tech tools?
So it's a loaded question.
It is.
I
That's why I
think
wanted to give it to you.
yeah, I think the right answer is in the next 10 years, if there isn't something like that, I'd be surprised.
Yeah.
But, we've been trying to do this for a long time. We've been talking about, building a solution that was going to do all these things, talk to your customers, know
Yeah.
exactly when a renewal is coming up and hit them, 60 days before their X date. Like we've talked about all these things, and then having all those roll into, your AMS. I think that it's something that we have to get right in the next 10 years because if we don't, I think it's going to be a huge, huge issue because the more technology that we're adding and the more insure techs that are popping up, um, there are too many tools out there that are one trick ponies. There
Yeah.
are
And
way too many of them.
yeah, no, I agree. And you brought up one just a minute ago with Agency Zoom, and people that know me know, obviously I have some affiliation there, and a little bit of bias there with Vertifor. But another one I have a lot of bias to, and I talk to a lot, is Canopy Connect. Sponsor of
Sure.
my show. Shout out to Tolga and his team, Ray, the whole night. Like they're incredible. But when I first started working with them back in 2000, and 2020, I mean, when we became close friends, it was your one-click solution to getting the deck pages. Now they, have expanded into they have loss runs. They do it in commercial. They do personal lines. Now their newer message coming out soon will be, they want to help you with the entire onboarding process and filling out this and doing that. And so they're still in that space of prospecting and a tool to help you, but they've broadened that in such a fantastic way. You brought up, and again, shout out to Canopy Connect. Reach out if you haven't yet. But Agency Zoom, to your point, you got it for this reason, but now you found it does so many other things, and it could automate this and automate that, send out emails, and do your pipelines, and it could be this and this data. I think those two tools alone go back to what you were saying. There are one trick ponies. There's one trick ponies that have expanded into a stable of one trick ponies. Maybe they've come together. I don't know
Sure.
the analogy, but you know what I mean.
No, I totally get it. And like if you're starting, insure tech and you're starting up, like obviously you're not going to have the Swiss Army knife of tools. Like I
Right.
get that. And like if you do, kudos to you. You are a
Yeah.
unicorn out there because that's so hard to do. But figuring out, that hey, just because you do one thing really good, that's not going to be enough anymore, I think,
Yeah.
to actually capture the market share that you're looking for. I mean, I was talking to an insure tech. I'm not going to name a name right now, but they're a big one. Everybody knows who they
Yeah.
are. And I was absolutely throttled when I found out how many customers that they had. I'm thinking these guys are huge. They've got a massive, following, huge on LinkedIn, huge on, all the insure tech, conferences and all that. So I'm under the impression like, whoa, these guys are big, big, big. And then I heard how many customers they had, and I was very, very shocked. And then I look over at, I think Agency Zoom, for example, they just posted something. I think 5,000, agencies are on
Yeah.
there, and 35,000 clients or something like that. Those are big numbers.
Yeah.
Those are numbers that made me go, whoa. Because now you're talking about like, a slice of the actual pie of that 33,000 independent agencies that are out there. So that's pretty cool. But I think like there's there's a lot of those one trick so to speak, agent or insure techs
Yeah.
that are starting to evolve. They're starting to realize, yes, I need to do other things. Um, but I think at the end of the day, to get back to your question originally, I'm hoping, I have my fingers crossed, that someone is going to come out with some sort of solution that has, and it's not just, an AMS, and it's not just a CRM and all the things I talked about, but it's also the back end side of it, which is the KPIs and the reporting and a dashboard that actually shows me what's going on in my agency in real time, shows me what my people are actually doing in real time. And I'm not just talking about revenue and premium, I'm talking about
Right.
activities. Like there's so much data points that are in our AMSs and
Yeah.
CRMs that we are not actually reporting on, or we're not effectively visualizing, that if we did that really, really well, it would be a game changer, not for maybe, the producers out there, and maybe not for the actual folks that are writing the business, but for the agency owner and the entrepreneurs out there who are actually looking at the data and looking at the numbers to make decisions and make strategy. Like that's where I'm hoping we're going to get to in the next few years, is solutions like that, solutions like Enable. They're doing something like that. But again, it's not an all-in-one solution. It's something that layers on top of what you have. So it's
Right.
another thing. So
It,
it's
yeah.
not it's not that one trick or Swiss Army knife, if you will, solution that I'm hoping for. But I think that there's a lot of really smart people in the insurance industry. There's a lot of really talented folks out there who have great ideas, and I'm confident that they're going to come up with something. And if not, the agencies like the Bradley Flowers of the world, they're going to go out there and they're going to do it themselves, right?
Right. And that's the thing.
And
Yeah.
so that's another side
With
of it.
APIs and whatnot, agencies are able to do that. And I do know, because it's been teased for a few years, that Big Orange has something coming real soon. To your point,
I listened to your podcast about Agency One. I was
there,
very, very interested in that.
there you go. So you said it, and I mean, I'm trying not to be too biased, but as I've got my orange notebook here, but yeah, I do, I do see that coming. So as we wrap up, I do have, because we could talk for another 2 hours about so many different topics, but I know we both got things to do. But um, I do want to wrap up. So I had an incredible conversation on this show a few weeks back. If you haven't listened to it, go back. Shameless plug, with Pat West. Dude is, I don't know if you know Pat West, but dude's phenomenal. Data guy. And we were talking about connectivity, as you mentioned earlier. And being able to connect all these different things, and these talk to these things. And my question to him, and I'd love to hear your answer as well, is how far is too far with connectivity? Like, how connected? I mean, how connected do we really need to be? That makes sense. Like, it's a broad question, I know, but there's a lot of people want to have connectivity, but how much is too much?
Well, when you say connectivity, you mean integration, right? Is that like ultimately
Yeah,
what you're? So,
ultimately, yeah. I mean,
so when we're talking like agency tech stack, I think the more the better. So I don't know what Pat said, because I didn't get that far with Pat's interview, but I would tell you that it's super, super important to have connectivity. I think with as many of the tools that you have, and I'll give you a really good example. Okay. And we, when we went to AMS 360, and we decided to make the move to Ring Central, we decided to make the move to Agency Zoom, the first things that we asked about were integrations. How do they actually integrate? Okay. And this is before, Vertafore had bought Agency Zoom. Um, but at the time, the big reason that we chose Agency Zoom was because of the integration. But that's all great and sounds good until you put it in practice, right? Like it's a great buzzword, but it doesn't always work. And we've
right,
seen a lot of solutions that it just didn't really work. So when we went through the training with my staff, the aha moment for me was, usually it takes like, 6 months to a year to onboard new tech. We went through probably a month of training in September of 2021. By December, Heath, we were using agency Zoom. We were putting in 99% of the policies into that system. That's an insane amount of
Yeah, it is.
like buy-in and onboarding. And the only reason that happened, the only reason, and I know this for a fact, is because it actually integrated. My people didn't have to put it into AMS 360 and then put it in over here in Agency Zoom. They didn't have to put it in Agency Zoom, then put it over here. The same thing with Ring Central. Like when they realize that we can do screen pops in Ring Central, and when someone calls in and Agency Zoom recognizes their phone number, it pops up their policy information right there on their screen. Like those are aha moments for your staff to go, oh, this works. Like we've been on a lot of systems that you say it's going to work and it doesn't work. And like when you have 40 people, who are all kind of in the same boat going, okay, this change is hard, but this change is actually working. It makes that change cycle go a lot quicker. And so I think, again, getting back to your question, yeah, I think connectivity is super important. I think the more things that integrate, the better. Now, does everything need to integrate? I think maybe not, but I think the core systems that you have, they certainly need to. Your core AMS, your core CRM, your core phone, email, like
Yeah,
those
yeah.
things all need Raider, all those things need, especially the Raider. If you're on a Raider, I'm not going to get into that because we don't like Raiders where we're at, but all those things they should talk to one another, and I think that the more things that are talking to one another, the better, because it's the less likelihood of making a mistake one place and then having to go over here and make another mistake. You kind of take a lot of those inefficiencies out and you take a lot of those errors out.
Yeah, I think it's a great answer. And I just love to hear from, tech forward thinking people, like, because for me, again, just that 10 years, I have a little bit of that old school still in me where I have that fear of, and again, I'm one of these guys that literally, and you can make fun of me all you want to. I've got an Alexa in every room in my house. I think we have like 10. And they all talk to each other, all this. And for some reason, I just have these, I don't know if you call them nightmares, but dreams of like someone waking up and, hey, Alexa, type an email to my insurance agent, letting me know this is going on, or, adding this policy or doing this or whatever, or someone getting in, their car and say, it's connected to their CRM. Hey, I've got an appointment with such and such, put the address in the GPS and take me there with self-driving vehicle. And then while your car's driving for you, then you're telling it connected to your CRM, send this email out, let them know I'm on the way, and then automate it to follow up. All
You
these
really
things
thought
are
about this.
like I'm thinking like there's so many ways that we could be connected, because everything, like, again, my house, before I go to bed, I tell Alexa to turn off the lights, turn on the fan, lower the air conditioner to this degree. And I'm like, for a guy, for me anyway, that, you know, says I'm fearful of technology in the future, I'm sure damn connected to everything in my house, and
You're the perfect person for me to say, okay, yeah, you should do telematics, man. Like you're already getting
right. So,
you're
and
already
for
getting
me,
tracked
like,
by everything. Let's track your car too.
exactly. My wife makes fun of me because I've gotten to the point where it's almost so lazy for me that, like, instead of just calling my kids in the bedroom, Alexa, make an announcement, tell all the kids to come to my bedroom, for me to tell them their chores or whatever it might be. And it's like, get your lazy ass up, walk back to their room, and tell them
That's
to do their
funny.
chores. But it's like, I just see this world of connectivity. I'm like, that to
So
me,
the
that's
scenario you're laying out, I would probably say back off on the connectivity.
right. But I'm
Right? Yeah,
afraid that's
that
10
sounds a
years from
little
now what it's
crazy.
going to look like.
But at the same time, like, okay, as an agency owner, like even though it hasn't been updated in a while, I still use the agency Zoom app like all the time. I stay
Yeah, yeah,
connected
yeah.
to my agency wherever I am in the world. I was just in Amsterdam and I was just in Germany, and like I'm keeping up with sales in real time because I've got an app on my phone and I can go ahead and look it up. Like so there's a point where connectivity probably gets too much. I guess the scenario you laid out, yeah, maybe, but
I did extreme
time
there, but
at the same time, dude, there's a producer out there that heard what you just said and goes, that's my dream scenario. Somebody out there went, whoa, that'd be awesome. What if I could get in my car and it knows I'm 10 minutes away from, a client, and it could send a text message letting them know, hey, I'll see you.
yeah.
There's things out there that can, somebody said,
And
holy cow,
picking up a
that's a cool
Starbucks
idea.
on the way for them, or grabbing a coffee for them on the way there, I don't know. I just think there's a lot of things that, I was the kid that was shaking in my boots when I saw Back to the Future with the flying skateboard for the first time because I'm like, I don't want that reality. Thank God we haven't gotten there yet. But because I still have enough in me of like, okay, this is enough. Like having AOL
Sure.
is enough. Having the internet's enough. Do we have to go further? And now my kids, I just talked to my 11-year-old yesterday, they're in school now, back to school. And it's like, today we learned how to use ChatGPT. And I'm like, oh my God, they're starting it in schools now. And instead of last year, they told them you
I'd be
cannot use
curious.
ChatGPT. They were against it. Now this year they're embracing it, teaching them how to use it properly. And
I'd
it's
love
like,
to see that
holy crap.
curriculum. I'd
What?
love to see what the curriculum looks like for that because
Me
honestly,
too.
and this is going to sound like really, nerdy, but like I think that is kind of going to become the future of especially, teachers, and we're off topic now, but that's okay. This is becoming an issue. How old are your kids?
11, 16, 14, or 11,
Okay, so
14,
you've got
16, if you go in
yeah,
order.
so all of your kids are have a cell phone, I assume.
Yeah.
They're in class, and so their teachers are now having the issue of, well, they can look anything up using Chat GPT or Google. It can come up with a better
Yeah.
answer than they can, blah 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 blah. So I think the next step of that for teachers, and it was just on the news the other day, is how do we embrace that? How do we teach that? How do we teach children how to start prompting AI? How do we teach them the right ways to work with AI?
Right.
Because at some point, yeah, AI is going to become a real tool in our tool chest. It's not going to be the TI-30, whatever. It's not going to be, Arnold
Yeah.
Schwarzenegger, but it is going to be a tool that you're going to need to use. We use it a lot already in our agency. But here soon, it's also going to be embedded in not just, content and creative. It's going to be embedded in financial. It's going to be embedded in insurance. It's going to be embedded in medical and in the health field. So
Yep.
it's going to be something that we have to learn how to train. We have to
Yeah.
learn how to work with, because at the end of the day, I do think like we've already opened Pandora's box on Gen AI.
Yeah.
And
We
a lot
have.
of what people are talking about is like, oh, it still hallucinates. It still does. Yeah, Chat GPT 3 did that. 4.0, it's not hallucinating anymore. Like
Not
it's a
as, yeah.
smart, it is smart. They've got the more Meta does, the more that OpenAI does, the more that the folks over that are working with Claude, like all these are all going to make each other better. And so I think it's probably a good thing that your kids are learning how to use it and actually getting taught how to use it. And then they're going to come up with, and that's what I love about kids, they're going to come up with better ways to use it. That's what's going to be really cool
Oh
is they're going
yeah.
to come to you and go, hey dad, check out what I just did. And you're going to look at something that they produced using AI and you go, holy shit, you guys did this, and it took you
Yeah.
10 minutes to do that. So
Yeah.
that I think
Yeah. To your point, my youngest, 11, sixth grade, was figuring out how to back into an A in her class by using chat of like what grades do I need to get here. If this is weighted at this much,
cool.
yeah, it was like because the teacher had said this test is worth 35% of your grade, and so she was like, well, if this test worth this much and the other 65 is here, how much do I need to make on all of these to fail this one and still pass? It's like dad or put all
That's
their effort
smart.
here and not do their homework as much
But
or
okay, so
wild.
like let's walk that back a little bit though. That's a really smart and intelligent thought process that they leveraged a tool. Now, granted, could they have sat down with a pen and paper and figured that
Or
out
TI
themselves?
82.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
sure.
Yeah, for sure, or whatever. But hey, they figured out a way to use a new technology, an emerging technology, to do that for them.
Yeah. And then
At the end of
what
the day,
was
is like, what's the problem?
what was funny about it is, and I started laughing because she was saying the teacher was like, no, I want you to use this to figure out, sentence structure and how to do this and how to craft
Sure.
these things. And so my daughter was like, okay, ChatGPT, tell me how to break this to my dad. This is what I want to do. And it was like, okay, here's what I would do, and it was like funny how, she come, I was like, what did it tell you to say to me? And the way she showed it to me, I was like, okay, so you want to use your time wisely. Cause she was like, Dad, I have to learn how to play this instrument, I have to be at this practice, this schedule. There's so much in my life. if I could cut that 35% test out or these other homework assignments and still make an A, does it really matter? And I'm like, holy crap. So anyhow, I could dive into this for a long time. I've got a call here in a few minutes, but dude, I've loved this conversation. I know we've got some other things planned in the future.
Yeah, I look forward to it, by the way. That's
Yeah,
gonna be fun.
challenging, the industry in a lot of ways. And there's so many topics we didn't get into. I may have to have a part 2 with you soon, but
We'll
thank you
just
so
listen and
much.
not do it in the morning, so we're a little sharper. I
Yeah,
was a
dude,
little spacey today.
it's all good. We got edits for that. So, and I can have AI do it for that matter. But anyhow, brother, I appreciate you. I look forward to continuing our friendship, and we'll talk soon, my man.
Absolutely appreciate it, Heath. It was a good time.
Yeah, dog.
Thanks.
All right.